Good morning and welcome to our Wednesday Mindful Minutes, where we are reading Bread of Life, Artos Zoes. We're going to be reading from Luke chapter 24, verse 30 to 32. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Let us reflect on these scriptures and praise God for revealing himself to us as bread that is broken, and offer thanks for Christ's faithfulness to you. May we confess your lack of gratitude and ask God to open our eyes to his goodness. Our devotionalist writes, "Remember the story about how Christ appeared to two of his disciples when they were walking to Emmaus, a town outside Jerusalem? It was a gloomy conversation, all about the tragedy that had unfolded 3 days earlier. Astonished by the strangers' seeming ignorance of the crucifixion of Jesus, the two travelers revealed their own ignorance by describing the death of a man who was walking right next to them. Then the stranger began instructing them. How could they be so slow to understand? Jesus laid it out from start to finish, reminding them of all the scriptures that applied to him from Moses, straight through to Malachi. When they arrived at their destination, the two travelers urged the stranger to stay with them. Again the roles were reversed. As the three sat down for their evening meal, the stranger began acting as a host, taking bread into his hands, giving thanks, breaking it, and then handing it to his guests. Suddenly, in the midst of thanksgiving and bread breaking, the two travelers knew exactly whom they were dining with."
It was the same man who had fed the 5,000, who had called himself the bread of life, who had died on a cross 3 days ago. I wonder how many times we're like those two disheartened travelers. We act as if Jesus is a million miles away, though he's standing right beside us. Like the disciples on the road, we feel abandoned and bewildered, far from the God who promises to be with us always. A friend of mine recently told me how discouraged she had been about her 7-year-old son, says the devotionalist. David was often impulsive and irritable and seemed clueless about how to get along with other kids. A loner at school, he could be a terror at home. She knew her son had a neurological disorder that contributed to his bad behavior. She had done everything she knew to help him, and she had prayed nonstop that God would heal him. Why hadn't he? Where was he? She was so hungry for a sense of Christ's presence, for tangible evidence that he cared about David and about her. Suddenly her thoughts turned to the summer that was winding to a close. Despite David's difficulties, the last couple of months had been fun. She thanked God for the good times that they had together as she recalled them one by one. Now that she thought about it, she realized David had been a lot calmer lately. There had been fewer bad episodes, fewer tantrums. Thank God for that. Maybe the new medicine was finally working. David had been eating and sleeping better too, come to think of it. And she was grateful for the neighborhood kids who had befriended him. David had spent nearly every day of the last month playing with them. The more my friend expressed her thankfulness to God, the devotionalist said, the more she found to be thankful for. Why hadn't she seen it before? It's like that with most of us, I think. We long for a tangible evidence of God's love, but we fail to see it, in part because we have not learned to be thankful. It's not just that God likes to be thanked, it's that we need to thank him. Expressing our gratitude is like holding a little celebration in God's honor. It's a way of feeding on his goodness, reminding ourselves what he's done for us. Thankfulness opens our eyes to God's faithfulness, which in turn nourishes our faith. No wonder the word Eucharist, a common name for the Christian commemoration of the Last Supper, comes from a Greek word meaning thanksgiving. Skipping gratitude is like skipping the meal God has prepared for us. Without it, we merely move on to the next feed, feeling hungry and empty without the faith to believe that God will sustain us.
Not long ago, a friend confided in me that he no longer believed in God, our devotionalist writes. To him, all religions seemed like fairy tales concocted to make people feel better. I felt sad for him, realizing how tragic it is to watch a sunset, to listen to waves breaking against a shore, or to hold a child on your lap without having someone to thank. If you're feeling hungry for God, spend some time right now thanking him for everything good in your life. It doesn't matter if your list is short, just start thanking him for the good you can see. then try to make gratefulness a habit. If you do, you will be surprised at how quickly your list will grow and how steady your sense of God's abiding presence will become. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day. Join us again tomorrow as we continue our study on the names of Jesus.